Well, good afternoon. It's a very windy afternoon here, as you can probably hear. I hope the sound on the video is okay, but we'll just carry on with lesson 13 of A Course in Miracles, reading again from the White Edition. I'll just continue to use this book now. I think I'm quite enjoying it. So today's lesson 13, a meaningless world engenders fear. And this is the first lesson that introduces the idea of God, right? Now don't turn off your video. It doesn't tell you what God is, right? There's nothing in this whole book that tells you what God is. It leaves it completely open-ended, and in fact it says at one point, this course cannot teach you the meaning of love. And if you look at the contemporary idea that God is love, then it cannot teach you the meaning of love. But you can experience it through your own illumination of your mind, or through your own enlightenment, or your own salvation, whatever you want to call that. And these lessons are directed or devised so as to purify the mind, so that you will become what would you call it, as in an empty vessel, so that you can, or a clean slate, so that it can be written on that slate or filled up in that vessel what love is through your own experience, and it won't be corrupted with the higgledy-piggledy of your conceptual thought system, which is what we are undoing in these first 165 lessons in the first half of the workbook. So lesson 13, a meaningless world engenders fear. Today's idea is really another form of the preceding one, except that it is more specific as to the emotion aroused. Actually, a meaningless world is impossible. Nothing without meaning exists. Woo! That kind of, nothing without meaning exists, but I see a meaningless world, So, and when you put into practice or take on board the idea that the world is meaningless of itself, other than the meaning that I give it, then what the fuck is the world? If nothing without meaning exists. Right, get it? Alright, follow along. Nothing without meaning exists. However, it does not follow that you will not perceive something that has no meaning. On the contrary, you will be likely to think that you do perceive it. Recognition of meaninglessness arouses intense anxiety in all the separated ones. Right? Recognition of meaninglessness arouses intense anxiety in all the separated ones. It represents a situation in which God and the ego challenge each other as to whose meaning is to be written in the empty space which meaninglessness provides. The ego rushes in frantically to establish its own ideas there, fearful that the void may be otherwise used to demonstrate its own unreality, which is what we're doing, and on this alone it is correct. Alright, so recognition of meaninglessness arouses intense anxiety in all the separated ones. It's like, I remember in the moment, just prior to my own illumination, and I'm recalling back to 1997, I had intense anxiety all the time, and I kept avoiding it, and I kept trying to look out in the world to decide situations and events that I thought were bringing that anxiety upon me. This person, this situation, this event is causing me intense. No. Recognition of meaninglessness, right? And there was a moment there was a definite moment for me where I looked at my life and realised how meaningless it was. It doesn't have any meaning whatsoever. And that was completely threatening to my peace of mind in that moment, because we come from, or I come from, you come from, we all, one, us, I, it, come from a realm, if you like, or a state of mind wherein we are what meaning is. Right? And to find ourselves in a place where there is no meaning, it's like we're scrambling up a well with very steep sides, trying to reach the top. That's how it feels, like I'm clawing my way up, trying to find meaning, trying to find light, trying to find purpose. And it's like you're not going to find it out in the world. You can only find it in yourself, which is good news, but also can be slightly disappointing if you're looking out in the world to validate your identity as a successful person, or as a beautiful person, or as a whatever person, because it all goes to shit. You can't take it with you. You just get old and wrinkly in the physicality of the association that you have, and then you come back and do it again. It's pretty funny. It is essential, right? I love how there's these absolutes here. It is essential. It's not just a little bit required, it's essential. Therefore, that you learn to recognize the meaningless and accept it without fear. Right? It's like, oh, well, okay, it's meaningless. Accept it without fear. If you are fearful, it is certain that you will endow the world with attributes which it does not possess, and crowd it with images that do not exist. Wow. All right. To the ego, illusions are safety devices, as they must also be to you who equate yourself with the ego. The exercises for today, which should be done about 3 or 4 times for not more than a minute or so at most each time, are to be practiced in somewhat different way from the preceding ones. With eyes closed, repeat today's idea to yourself, then open your eyes and look about you slowly. I'm looking at a meaningless world. Repeat this statement to yourself as you look about, then close your eyes and conclude with, a meaningless world engenders fear because I think I'm in competition with God. Right? And I'll come back to that little section. You may find it difficult to avoid resistance in one form or another to this concluding statement. And I'll tell you for why in a second. Whatever form such resistance may take, remind yourself that you are really afraid of such a thought because of the vengeance of the enemy. Because of the vengeance of the enemy. You are not expected to believe the statement at this point and will probably try to dismiss it as preposterous. Note carefully, however, any signs of overt or covert fear which it may arouse. This is our first attempt at stating an explicit cause and effect relationship of a kind which you are very inexperienced in recognizing. Do not dwell on the concluding statement, and do not try even to think of it except during the exercise periods. That will suffice at present. Thanks, Jesus. That's okay for the present. That's good. Let you off the hook there. So, a meaningless world engenders fear because I think I'm in competition with God. Right? And initially you're going to be saying to yourself, I don't think I'm in competition with God. Why would I? I love God. I tell myself that God's wonderful, God is love, and I have all these beautiful concepts about God and all this sort of stuff. And it says, I think I'm in competition with God. That doesn't make sense to me. Right? But the recognition, and this is where, and I love the AA, the 12-step program for this. Before you can undergo the process of healing yourself from being an alcoholic, you have to be able to admit you're an alcoholic. Right? It doesn't matter how many times you turn up at meetings or how many times you tip that bottle down the sink. It doesn't do anything until you can, the process doesn't start until you can admit you're an alcoholic. And the same with this. I think I'm in competition with God. Right now, until you reach that point in your mind where you realize that you don't want God. Right? I want my own world. Fuck off God, and I want it my own way. Right? That's what you chose. That's what I chose, keeping my finger on my nose, because the sole responsibility of a miracle worker is to accept atonement for themselves, right? The experience that I'm having, my physical, temporal, earthly, illusory experience, is one of separation from source, because that's what I chose, that's what I wanted. I had free will. I'm not a slave. God didn't create me to be a slave. I have free will, right? And just because I find a Bible or some nice books that tell me all these wonderful things about God and heaven and the heavenly state and angels and all these things, and I form an association with that in my own mind, doesn't mean that circumvents the fact of the matter that I chose this for myself in the outset before time and space began. Right? So somewhere in my own mind, and it'll be uncovered as we go along in this, and maybe even now, is going to be this light bulb moment where you realise, holy fuck, I don't want God. I just want a better life in the dream. I just want things to go my own way and for everyone to stop picking on me. Yeah, it's funny. You don't get it on your own terms. You don't get to have your cake and eat it too. But you kind of do in a sense, but not on your own terms. Right? So a meaningless world engenders fear because I think I'm in competition with God. All right? Whether you believe that or not, whether you accept it from me or from this book or not, doesn't matter. But just for the purposes of these exercises, let that be true, what it says, and let you have no clue about it. Ready? Because my thoughts don't mean anything. Lesson 10. Love that lesson. My thoughts about that being wrong about me because I'm better than everyone else out there doesn't mean anything. All right, so the application of the thing with eyes closed, repeat the ideas, today's ideas slowly to yourself, then open your eyes and look about. So a meaningless world engenders fear. Just simply close your eyes, repeat it to yourself in your mind. Can you hear me? Should be able to. We are one. We're all connected in that. Right, then open your eyes and look about yourself. A meaningless world engenders fear, and because I think I'm in competition when you conclude your practice period. Right, meaningless world engenders fear. A meaningless world engenders fear. A meaningless world engenders fear. And if it brings up anxiety and everything, that's fantastic. That means you're doing it properly. If it pushes you into this kind of tight wedge, this paradoxical, I'm here but I'm told that I'm not here kind of, I exist but I don't exist. All right. And I think it was Mayor Barber who said the thing that you're afraid to look at is the idea that you actually don't exist. Could be wrong on the quote, but something like that. So, all right, well, I love you. That's it. Lesson 13. We'll do lesson 14 tomorrow. Lesson 14 is a really cool one. God did not create a meaningless world. Pardon me. And hopefully that's fun. I've got quite a lot of people now writing into me little things and just saying how much they're enjoying the fact that I'm breaking these lessons down a bit, you know, and like whatever it is to you, it is to you. But if my little interpretations of things as we go along are helpful, so be it. I mean, you can't do anything wrong, and you know, at some point, I remembered having to make a choice. I had several profound, or what, not really profound, well, profound as well, but several prominent teachers for me externally, initially in this, and who I realised that I was never going to get this on my own. And I, just for a second, I had to take somebody else's word for it who'd already had an experience and just see if that fell into place for me in any particular sense, you know, and if it did, it did, if it didn't, it didn't. And I found that over the years, you know, I've listened to many videos and been to many things that wherein this is talked about, taught, everything, expression sessions and things like that. And I find that some teachers I really link with, you know, that I really hear. There's a kind of an unwritten communication going on, and others are just, you know, there's no experience in it, no life, you know, and people tell me the same sorts of things in relationship to different things. But the whole point is to bring about an experience of firstly clearing away the blocks to love, and then reinstalling true vision through the process of letting go of the necessity to validate your process externally and access the Holy Spirit within, right? Through listening in a kind of a meditative endeavor where you listen. And I was told very recently, because life, the universe and everything has been quite hectic around here lately, I've found that I haven't been putting any much time into meditation, etc. And when I say meditation, I mean listening, right, for the Holy Spirit. And I was told quite clearly that if you want to hear, in inverted commas, if you want to hear that voice, capital V, you have to listen for more than 8 minutes. And I thought that was quite specific, right? And I heard that very clearly. And it's something that I don't really call upon the voice within me much, other than as a more of an anchoring point, in the beginning of the day, throughout the day, whatever, just to sort of realign my mind and remind myself of my true purpose. But I don't seem to be upset by anything, not for many years now, and so I don't feel necessarily that I should be listening to any kind of a voice. But I do hear it from time to time, sometimes quite randomly, and sometimes it's just a sense of things. And I wrote a book which is a journal of the first 20 years of my transformation, I guess. It's called Truth from the Top Down by Dave Phare, and you can probably find that on Amazon or BookPod or something like that. And there are quite a few stories in there, like anecdotes of hearing that voice, hearing the Holy Spirit, and consciously listening for that voice and being directed very specifically from within. And very, very beautiful time in my life. Also very tumultuous because of this book, which it says at the end, now throw this book away. All right, and I hope that if you're tagging along with me in these lessons, we'll get to that point where you feel you can just throw this away, because something's shifted. You've had a quantum shift in your consciousness, and you're internally directed. All right, well, I love you, and see you tomorrow for number 14.